Yes. Right, well, Mr. Stern is just coming back, I think. Good. All right, Mr. Stern?
Yes.
Happy to continue?
Yes.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Millett. Yes?
Yes. Mr. Stern, thank you very much for coming back. We had a discussion at the beginning of your evidence about the smoke coming out of the smoke vents that you very helpfully showed us were situated above the main entrance to the building when you arrived. Can I just ask you one very short question, building on that a little bit? If you go to your statement, page 5, you'll see in the second paragraph there, 5 lines down from the start, that you say there was definitely vents on the entrance pumping out light grey smoke at the time. And I just want to just get your understanding or your recollection of what was happening when you use the word pumping. When you use the word pumping, do you remember that the smoke was actually being pushed out, or whether it was doing something else?
I probably used pumping as the best way to try and explain it. From sitting in our trying to visualise and remember, it was just smoke coming out of the vents.
Right.
I'll probably use the word pumping just to try my best to explain as best as I could.
Okay.
Or what I saw or what I witnessed.
Can I just ask, I can visualise smoke coming out of...
I'm sorry.
Are you not getting anything?
If the witnesses, if the mic's too near, it completely muffles it for me.
Shall we try again? Just help me with this. I can visualise smoke seeping out of the vents and running up almost on the building, on the front of the building. I can also visualise smoke being puffed out away from the building to some extent. Can you
add to
recall
that,
either of
yeah,
those?
so I would say it was being pushed out away from the building.
So there's a degree of force behind
There
it.
was, yeah, I would say
but
there was
not very much. Would
yes.
that be fair?
Yeah, that would be fair.
Right. Does that help?
It does, yes. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, before the lunch break, we were talking about you on the 6th floor, and you came down to the 5th floor, and I think we got you back down to the 5th floor in terms of your journey in the building on the night. Can I just pick that up? When you got down to the 5th floor, I think you say that there was another crew there with a branch and breaking in equipment. And that's page 9 at the bottom of the page. Bottom of the second paragraph, I suppose it's the third paragraph on page 9. You see, it says, when you came back down to the 5th, a crew had come up with a branch and breaking in equipment to enter the 5th floor flat. Do you remember who they were, that crew?
No.
Did you speak to them?
Briefly, yes.
What was the discussion? Do you remember?
They had a branch. I believe they were just about to set into the riser, or it had been set in. I gave them my thermal imaging camera. They were just about to make entry into that 5th floor flat. So I let them carry on so I could go up to the 6th floor to set up on the 6th floor.
Okay. Did you tell them what you had seen on the 6th floor?
No.
You say in the next paragraph, so when I came back down to the 5th, there was a crew there with a branch and breaking in equipment. We were just charging the jet, and we were about to go in. To be clear, do you mean you and firefighter Hippel?
Yes, yeah, well, I would have been partner. Yes, it was firefighter Hippel.
Not the other crew you'd just spoken to?
No. From memory, I can't remember whether it was us or that crew that were charging up the hose. But I do remember there was a crew there. I gave them my thermal imaging camera, and I let them carry on.
Right. So they went in and you didn't.
Yes.
And at the top of page 10 of your statement, just following it through, you say that it wasn't a long conversation, and you describe it. Can I have your thermal imaging camera? We're going in. Have you got everything? Yeah, okay. That's about the sum of it, is it?
Yeah, summarising it.
Now, you then say... Sorry, I should just ask you. At that stage, did you see a man coming out of the flat next to the flat into which that fire crew was going?
No, I don't remember that.
Firefighter Hippel has said in his statement, and indeed this morning, that he encountered that gentleman and told him to leave the building. Do you remember that?
I must have not been there at that time.
Okay. Do you remember at that stage seeing any other residents on the 5th floor?
Not that I can recall.
Did you actually see that crew make entry into the fifth floor?
No,
flat?
we exited, or I exited the lobby before they breached that door.
Right. Now you then say, in the first main paragraph on page 10, I went back out into the foyer and into the stairwell. What's the foyer there?
Again, that must be a typo from the police officer who wrote the
Right.
statement. I went back into the stairwell.
Okay, so you left the 5th floor lobby through the door into the stairwell?
Yes.
Okay. And you say, I turned round and a young man who I now know his name was Sam, and firefighter Justin O'Byrne was with us. Just pausing there. That's the stairwell outside the 5th floor flat, is it?
From what I remember, yes.
How clearly do you remember those two gentlemen being there?
I remember seeing them. I don't remember I can't quite remember if it was exactly outside the 5th floor flat.
Okay. Now, Richard Hippel says in his statement and orally that he doesn't remember there being anybody else there when you and he went out from the 5th floor lobby to go to the 16th floor.
I may be incorrect, but I definitely did come across firefighter O'Byrne and a resident somewhere on that stairwell.
Now, at the moment you left the 5th floor, your intention was to go where?
At that point, I believe, my intention was to go back up to the 6th floor to begin firefight operations on the 6th floor.
Right.
But information then came down that there was someone trapped or someone needed rescuing or help on the 16th floor.
Right. Now, do you remember whether firefighter O'Byrne was there in the stairwell outside the 5th floor when you left it to go up to the 6th?
I remember him being in the stairwell. I can't quite remember what floor I remember.
Right. His recollection is that he was on the stairwell around the 10th or 11th floor when he met the man you refer to as Sam and somebody else. That was his recollection. Can you help us with what you remember about that meeting?
I can't. I just remember seeing Justin O'Byrne with another resident. I can't quite remember exactly what floor I was on or when I came across them, but I did see them on the stairwell.
Right. And just to be clear, the man who has been identified as Sam says that when he got to the 11th floor, he was on the way down, he met a fireman who was alone. Can you help with that?
No, sorry.
Right. So, can you remember at what point, after having left the 5th floor, you discovered that you had to go, that you discovered that there was someone on the 16th floor who needed assistance?
Sorry, say that again?
Yeah. Do you remember at what point, having left the 5th floor, that there was someone on the 16th floor who needed your assistance?
Within a minute or so. It wasn't a great deal of time.
Okay. Do you remember who it was who told you that there was someone on the 16th floor who needed help?
I don't remember how I got that information. I seem to my memory seems to overlap a few in regards to the resident and Justin O'Byrne, or radio traffic. I can't quite remember properly.
Right. In your contemporaneous notes, if we can just look at those, because this might help you just confirm what you just said. If you go to your contemporaneous notes, you say on page 2, that near the top, so we closed the door and I informed ECO of my findings. We something, the 6th floor lobby. Does it say? Would you help me with what you wrote there?
I think it says exited.
Exited, right. Exited the 6th floor lobby to be informed of a person trapped on the 16th floor. I can't remember who told me this. We proceeded to the 16th floor. Now, those were contemporaneous notes, but you were tired when you wrote them. I understand that. Looking at those notes, first of all, do you remember whether it was the 5th floor that you were leaving when you discovered you had to go to the 16th floor, or the 6th floor?
I can't, sorry.
Okay. And when you got the information to go to the 16th floor, you say in your notes you can't remember who told you this. Looking back on it, do you still not remember?
Yeah, to this day I still can't put.
Right.
But that's fine.
So when you come to your statement at page 10, where you say, I went back out into the foyer and into the stairwell, I turned round, and a young man who I now know, his name was Sam, and firefighter Justin O'Byrne was with us. Looking back on it, is that right?
I have I have a vivid memory of being told that, and again I can't remember from who. I think that's being mixed up with maybe what Justin has told me after the incident. I'm not sure, but right. The information that I received is as what I said there.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, on your route up to the 16th floor, did you stop from the 5th floor? Did you stop in at the 6th floor? Do you remember?
I can't, no, sorry.
Okay. When you went up to the 16th floor, were you with anybody?
Firefighter Hippel.
Hippel, all the time?
We was going up together, whether I was in front or behind, I can't.
Okay.
I just know he was coming up with me.
Okay. Do you remember on the way up meeting firefighter O'Byrne?
Yes.
Do you remember roughly where?
No, sorry.
Okay. Do you remember when you did meet him, whether he was alone or with somebody?
I thought he was with somebody.
Okay, okay. And can you describe that somebody?
Remember? No, I can't, sorry. Unless I put it in my statement, I can't remember what he looks like.
Right. I mean, he was a male?
He was a male, yes.
Roughly what age?
20 and above. I think he had a hoodie on. That's all but I don't know whether that's mixed information for something I saw later. I'm not sure, but
right. Okay. Was it possible that you? Sorry. Do you remember meeting somebody? 2 people.
I can't remember. No.
Okay. Now you say in your statement that you were told, never mind by who, and it's in capital letters, my dad is bedridden and he's trapped on the 16th floor and I need help to get out. Do you remember who told you that?
No.
Do you remember where you were when you were told that?
On the stairwell.
You were in the stairwell. Okay. Do you remember being briefed by anybody at the bridgehead to go and make to go and assist somebody on the 16th floor?
No.
When you were told what we've read there, my dad is bedridden and he's trapped on the 16th floor, And you were told that in the stairwell. Did you communicate that down to the bridgehead?
Yes.
Was your message received and understood?
Yes.
Okay. When you communicated it to the bridgehead, do you remember what you said?
Along the lines of reports of someone needing assistance on the 16th floor, and we're making our way up.
Do you remember whether you used the words bedridden?
Can't remember.
Right. When you had this discussion with this person, do you remember whether you asked him whether there was a fire on the 16th floor?
I can't remember. I don't think I did.
Okay. Did you have a discussion with firefighter O'Byrne on the stairs? Do you remember?
I would have. I can't remember what that would have been off.
Did he tell you anything about the conditions, or do you remember whether he did tell you anything about the conditions he'd encountered in the tower?
No, because I remember being quite shocked at the conditions on the 16th floor lobby.
Right. That's when you got there?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay. On your way up, as I think you've described it in your statement at page 10 in the third paragraph, you say you remember people were now coming out from the building. Do you remember people coming down past you on the staircase when you were going up to the 16th floor?
Yes, I do, yeah.
Do you remember how many there were?
No, I don't know.
Did you talk to them?
No.
Did you see whether or not they were suffering any signs of smoke inhalation?
Not that I noticed, no.
Did they give you any indication as to the conditions higher up in the building?
No.
Did they tell you where they'd come from?
No.
Right. So you just passed them, did you?
Yes, yeah.
Can you give us an idea of the numbers?
No more than 10?
Right. And what sort of state were they in? Were they panicking or were they calm?
No, they seemed quite calm walking down, exiting the building.
And did the fact that you'd seen 10 or so people passing you on the stairs give you any indication of the conditions higher up in the tower?
No.
And on your way up, what was the air in the staircase like?
Clear?
Clear? Was it clear all the way up?
Yes.
Okay. Did you open the door to the lobbies on your way up to check the conditions in the lobbies?
I remember to try and, because it was quite hard to work out what floor we were on, as there was no clear indication on the stairwell. So I would periodically check the lobbies just to see if I could see the floor number on near the lift, where the lifts were.
Now,
and where I did check, there was none of the lobbies were smoke logged.
Right. You say that in your evidence, and it's in your statement as well, that you would periodically check because there was no clear indication on the stairwell. Can you describe for us what was there a difficulty in identifying what floor you were on?
Yes, I don't remember seeing any numbers on the stairwell, personally.
Okay. You say you don't remember seeing any numbers. What was it that prompted you to check in the lobbies to see what floor you were on?
Because there was no numbers on the stairwell, so the only way to check is to hopefully see the numbers on the lift lobby, which I was hoping that would have the numbers on them, which they did.
Did that process of having to check in the lobbies for the floor numbers slow you down in any way?
It would have, by a matter of seconds, but yes, it would have slowed us down.
Yeah. Did it, to your recollection, impede, get in the way of your general firefighting operations during the night?
Checking the lobbies?
The difficulties you had with identifying which floor you were on, did that get in the way of your firefighting operations generally?
Well, yeah, it made it difficult for me myself to know what floor I was on. So I only entered the building once after that BA wear. So yes, it was a difficulty. Yeah.
Right. And in your experience, is it common or uncommon to encounter numbering systems or no numbering that you did on that night within Grenfell?
From my experience, there's normally an indication of what floor you're on. Yeah, in the stairwell.
Right. Just going back to the question of these residents again, or occupants coming back down past you, what did you think they were doing when they were coming down?
Leaving the building.
Did you think they were evacuating?
Some people are overcautious, and some, we've been to many incidents before where an alarm will sound or they hear fire engines and they want to leave, and they leave. So I wouldn't stop them.
Did you have any thoughts about why they thought it was better to leave?
Not at that time, no.
Okay. And then you get to the 16th floor, and you say at the bottom of page 10, that Dickie Hippel was in front of you. I'm summarising this. And then you got in front of him, changing positions. So I opened the door to the 16th, first to see the smoke. I believe Justin was by himself at the time. Sam must have been behind. Now, just to get I want to get your mental picture, if I can, doing the best you can with your recollection. Who arrived at the 16th floor lobby door first?
I opened the door first. I definitely remember that.
Right.
I can't remember who got there first. I'm assuming I was there first. I may have been wrong because I opened the door first. So I can't quite remember exactly who got to that lobby first. But I definitely opened that lobby door first.
Right. Do you remember when you arrived there at the 16th floor where Richard Hippel was by that point?
I was assuming he was there.
They're
or
already
behind me. I can't remember. I remember opening the door, okay. And I knew Dickie Firefighter Hippel was there.
Right. Okay. And the male you refer to as Sam, do you remember where he was when you arrived at the 16th floor?
No.
No. Do you remember where Justin O'Byrne was when you arrived at the 16th floor?
He would have been behind us somewhere on the staircase.
You say he was alone. You believe he was by himself. So what does that mean?
He either left the resident that he was with at some stage.
Right. Obviously. Sorry, I just had a message to ask you this question. Just to clarify, 4 lines up from the bottom of that page, it says Justin de St Aubin. Who is that?
Yeah, no, that's, again, I think that's a typo. It should be Justin O'Byrne.
Right. Now, Richard Hippel mentions the fact that on the way up he encountered firefighter O'Byrne, but not Sam. Do you know, recalling your arrival on the 16th floor, at what point you'd encountered Sam?
I can't remember.
Okay. Now, on arrival, Richard Hippel says that the lobby door was open and black smoke was coming out. And he remembers that the lobby door was being held open by a man. Never mind about whether it's Sam or not. He remembers a man holding the lobby door open when he arrived. Did you see him arrive at the 16th floor?
I can't remember. I don't remember seeing anyone holding that lobby door open.
Right. And just to complete that picture, the man who is Sam Daniels says that he and firefighter O'Byrne didn't go up to the 16th floor. They waited on a lower floor, and you and Richard Hippel came back down to them later.
Okay.
Can you comment on that?
I just remember seeing firefighter O'Byrne quite soon after we exited the 16th floor lobby.
Right.
I can't tell you whether that was right outside or a number of floors down.
Right. Now, in the third paragraph on page 10 of your statement, a little bit higher up from where we were, you say, it's about halfway down that paragraph, when I opened the door that lobby was like 10, smoke-logged floor to ceiling. So I shut the door. What do you mean by like 10?
So
Like floor 10? Or
the police officer that was interviewing me wanted a range of smoke logging between 0 being clear, 10 being the worst possible. So it was a 10, it was smoke logged floor to ceiling, thick
Right.
black smoke.
I see what you mean, okay.
Yeah.
And you say I shut the door and didn't know if it was the 16th, but we counted hoping it was correct. And then you say, but we confirmed it with Sam, who had followed us up. Now, you're unclear in your recollection now about whether this gentleman, Sam, was with you at all. Do you remember, first of all, whether you did confirm that it was the 16th floor with anybody?
I remember confirming it with someone, but since that incident I have spoken to other firefighters and Justin, so I don't know whether I'm mixing my memory up from what he's said or done, so I don't know I don't know if it was the resident in question. Right. I remember trying to confirm it with someone. I thought there was someone there. I may be mistaken. I don't know if it's my memory playing tricks on me, but I did try or spoke to someone to confirm if this was it might have even been firefighter Hippel. I don't know. Right.
Okay. Because when you say we confirmed it with Sam in your statement in unqualified terms, I think what you're now saying is that you can't actually remember.
Yes.
Okay. And then you, having seen the smoke floor to ceiling, I think you say, did that prompt any thoughts in your mind about fire spread, about what had happened with the fire?
It shocked me. We're 12 floors above the fire floor, with the lobby being smoke logged at that density, at that speed. I couldn't rationalise it. It made no sense to me. You would expect those kind of conditions to be the thick black smoke. They kind of present something we call a backdraft conditions, where the compartment's oxygen deprived, so the smoke gets really thick. It should be really hot. It wasn't hot. It was just extremely thick smoke.
Right.
So yes, it did concern me.
Did you have any thoughts about compartmentation, about whether it was holding in Grenfell Tower at that point?
Well, I couldn't explain what happened. You shouldn't really get that kind of smoke in a lobby area like that. You would expect, some kind of compartmentation within the flats to keep that smoke where it is. So I just couldn't explain it.
Right. Did you have a discussion with Richard Hippel about what you were seeing in front of you?
We didn't have time. I still thought we were someone unaccounted for that clearly now needed help. There was no time to sit and talk about it. We had to do something about what we had.
Did you say you were shocked? Did you radio down to the bridgehead to tell them what was going on?
On my way up, I tried to make contact with the bridgehead a number of times with my Barry set and switching to my handheld radio with no joy.
Right. When you went into the 16th floor lobby, you say at the top of page 11, 6 lines down, you say, definitely we need to make a rescue here because that smoke's pretty bad. And then you say, he was probably early 20s, late teens, I couldn't tell, his face was quite covered. And you go on to describe the man you say was there. Again, how confident are you, having discussed your recollections with me this afternoon, about whether this man that you were seeing was actually on that floor?
Not confident. I remember seeing them at some point on the stairwell. I can't quite place it whereabouts.
Right. And then in the next paragraph you say, before we entered the lobby on the 16th floor, I asked him where the flat was, and he said to the right of the door. Again, how well do you recall that conversation?
I remember speaking to someone to try and get information of where we need to go, what flat we need to go to. I really can't remember if I was given a flat number. I just remember being pointed in a direction to the right of the lobby. I remember hearing that, or someone telling me that's where we need to go, to the right of the lobby door. And that's what I took.
Right. Do you remember who pointed you in that direction?
I thought it was the resident, so I may be wrong.
Right.
I'm obviously wrong, but someone told me that's where I needed to go.
Do you know where Firefighter O'Byrne was at this stage?
No.
No. He wasn't with you, was he?
I don't remember seeing... Well, it's hard, because I remember seeing him coming out, and I don't know if my memory is getting confused between going in and coming out, or... that information was passed on to me at some point.
Right. Now, I should just put this to you, that Sam Daniels, who was the son of the person who needed rescuing on that floor, it says that he gave the floor and flat number to the firefighter with whom he was waiting on the 11th floor in the stairwell. That's what he remembers, and not to the firefighters who actually went into the 16th floor. And that's his recollection. Having told you that, does that help you with your recollection?
No, it really doesn't. It confuses me even more.
Right. Seeing the smoke and thinking you need to make a rescue, did you have any thoughts about whether other people on the floor, or indeed all people on that floor, should be told to evacuate?
I was, to be honest, I was quite task-focused on rescuing Sam's dad at that time from the information we were given. So that's what I wanted to do.
Right.
And until I can get to the flat and maybe reassess the flat, reassess the situation, that was what I was aiming to do.
Now, you enter the lobby and you say in your statement on page 11, in the third paragraph, fourth line down, you say, when I first went in, I went as low as possible. I was literally on my belly. I fully went into the foyer when I felt a body that was kneeling over. So I stood up. He was light, so I put my hand round him and picked him up. At that stage, was Richard Hippel in front of you or behind you?
Behind me.
Okay. At that stage, I think you had no water with you, did you?
Yes, we had no water.
No. Well, did you think it was safe to enter the lobby, given what you could see, without water?
It wasn't safe, but we have to attempt to make a rescue. It's what we're there to do.
Okay. Now, the body that you say was kneeling over, I think they want to say, you brought him out, and he was actually conscious, his eyes were wide open, and he was in a state of shock. Did you carry him out, or did you stand him up?
I stood him up, and I either stepped back and Dickie guided him out, or Dickie guided me out. Firefighter Hippel guided me out. I didn't need to carry the casualty. He stood up and walked.
Right. Now, you say that's how we found out that it was Ebba Defan from flat 134 that we rescued in the foyer from when he tried to get out from his flat.
Yeah, it's out of context. So a number of months later,
right,
we came in contact with Mr. Defan, who told us the story, and the timeline fit that we was the one that rescued him on the 16th floor lobby.
Okay. So at the time you got this gentleman out off that floor, did you know who he was?
No.
Did you know what flat he'd come from?
No.
Did you ask him anything of that?
I didn't have a chance to. I believe I asked him if he was, either me or Firefighter Hippel asked if he's okay, and before I knew it, he was going down the stairs.
Right. Did you understand, or did you have any thoughts about whether this gentleman, Mr. Defan, as he turned out to be, was the person that you'd been sent up to assist?
No.
When you came back out into the stairwell with Mr. Defan, because you say you took him out, you say, actually, let's go to your statement. It's page 11 in the second last paragraph on that page. You say the lobby door got shut behind us and we're all in the stairwell. We quickly asked, are you all right? He said, yeah. Can you make your way out? He said, yeah, and he was gone. He just ran down, just bolting down the stairs. Okay. First of all, who's the we're? Who's the we?
Me and Firefighter Hippel.
Right. Anybody else?
Not that I can remember.
Right. And at that stage, did you ask him about which flat he'd come from?
I didn't have a chance. Okay. He just ran down the stairs.
At that point, did you think that that gentleman was the person?
No, because I was
assist?
told that the person we're trying to rescue is bedridden.
Right.
So I assumed he was standing, that it was not him.
Right, but you said earlier you don't remember who told you that the person you were going to rescue was bedridden.
Yes.
So, okay. So you thought, is this right? Tell me if this is wrong. I don't want to put words in your mouth. That you thought that you'd made a rescue, but it wasn't the bedridden person you'd come up to rescue.
That was my assumptions, yes.
Was your assumption, okay. At that stage, you're out in the stairwell with Richard Hippel. Did you try and radio down again to the bridgehead?
No.
You didn't. Why is that?
I knew the radio comms weren't working at that stage, so I just didn't bother trying again. I did try again in the lobby later on, but
right.
At that stage, I don't think I did.
Okay, so you go back into the 16th floor lobby, as you say in your statement. Before you do that, you say at the bottom of page 11, Sam was still in the stairwell. We didn't have much time to really do anything else. Again, in the light of the evidence you've given today, how good is your recollection about Sam being in the stairwell?
Again, I don't know whether I've taken that from speaking to colleagues that were with him.
On page 12 of your statement at the top, you say, Firefighter Hippel was now at the door. Dickie went first, following the right-hand wall. It goes on for a bit. This is I think your description of you re-entering the 16th floor. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Why did you go back into the 16th floor?
I still wanted to make a rescue.
Right. Did you have a discussion with Richard Hippel about still having to make a rescue?
I can't remember.
Right. Did you know which flat you had to go to make the rescue?
I don't think I did, no.
So how were you going to do it?
Search everywhere we could.
Right. You say 8 lines down, or say from the top of page 12, I tried as well, we couldn't work out where it was, and it was taking too long, it was heavily smoke-logged. We checked the door, it was unlocked. Which door is that? Do you remember?
The first flat we came to, so we followed the right-hand wall, which took us past the bin chute, back round to the first floor. I tried to check the door to get a point of reference. Clearly couldn't see the door, it was extremely smoke-logged, so I tried to feel for the numbers, or we tried to feel for the numbers. I couldn't find any numbers on the door at that time, from what I remember.
Okay. Just assist us, if you can, by reference to one of your exhibits, JAS3, which is MET 000168993, where I think you've marked a pro forma plan of the building. Could you just show us where on this plan the flat was that you checked by reference to when you say we opened the door to that flat?
Yeah, I think I've got those numbers the wrong way around,
Yeah,
but it was, we entered where I wrote 134.
I see, okay. So you come in from the stairs, follow the right-hand wall around, past the bin chute, and what you've marked as flat 134, which I think is 136,
Yes.
is the one you tried the door of, did you?
Yes.
Right. And then the description that you give us on page 12, and indeed 13, is all of your search of flat 136?
Yes.
Okay. Can you tell us how far you went into the flat?
A few meters. the conditions changed from the lobby being very smoke-logged with no heat to when we entered the flat, very smoke-logged with extreme heat. So the conditions changed very quickly.
Okay. And you say in the second paragraph on page 12, in the first line, that the heat was like an oven. To compare it to an oven, it was like an oven.
Well, yeah, because it was all around us. It wasn't at ceiling. It was as low as I went. It was hot.
Right. And you were feeling that through your PPE, were you?
Yes.
Right. And you say there was overpressure in the flat.
Yeah, I assume that simply because the door. Dickie went in the flat first. So as I cleared behind him, I remember the door closing behind me. So with that heat, I thought it was a bit of pressure pushing that door shut.
Right.
It could have been a self-closing door, I don't know, but I remember the door closing and having me to open the door when we exited the flat.
Right. And then you decided that you had to leave the flat because I think you say it wasn't safe.
Yes, at that stage, the conditions were now getting too dangerous for us to be in there with no firefighting media.
Had you seen any flames within the flat at that point?
No, you could feel the heat, but I couldn't see any flames.
Right. Could you form any view about where the heat was coming from?
No, it literally felt all around us. I couldn't have a direction of heat. It was just everywhere. As soon as we went in that flat, it was very hot.
Right. You went a few metres into the flat. Did you go into any of the rooms?
No.
Right. So how long would you say, in terms of seconds or minutes, were you in the flat for?
A few minutes, a couple of minutes.
Right. At the top of page 13 of the statement, you say, in the first main paragraph, in the last sentence, when I tried to rationalise how much smoke in the lobby area, I couldn't. So it had to be coming from somewhere. Were you in the flat at the time when you had these mental processes?
So when I started trying to piece together what was happening is when we exited the flat, I closed the door behind us, and Firefighter Hippel then began to go down carry on the wall to go and knock on the doors.
Right.
So while he was doing that, I stayed at the front door of flat 136 that we went into.
Right.
And that gave me a few moments to try and work out what was going on. I then tried to contact the bridgehead again through both radios with no joy. I couldn't work out why there was so much smoke in the foyer with no heat. Again, the conditions didn't match up. I expected the conditions I got in the flat made sense. Maybe there was a fire in there, with a lot of smoke, a lot of heat, but it just didn't add up in the foyer.
Right. Okay. And you just described Richard Hippel knocking on doors. Do you remember which doors he knocked on?
So from where I was standing at outside door 136, he carried on down that right-hand wall. So I'm assuming he would have gone to flat 135 and 134.
Right. Did you, because the smoke was thick on that floor, could you see him at all?
No.
Could you hear him?
I could hear him, yes.
Could you hear, what was he doing?
Kicking the doors. Well, he was banging the doors.
Right.
Either kicking them or hitting them extremely hard.
Okay. Was he shouting?
I can't remember. I could hear his voice.
Right.
I don't know if he was shouting at me to make sure I could still hear him or shouting at whoever's in the flat, but I could hear him.
Did you yourself go around knocking on any of the doors?
No,
or
I
shouting
stayed
at residents?
outside door 136 until he came back.
Right. Okay. You say, I think, that you knocked on other doors. That's the second main paragraph on page 13. And this may be not you, but third line down, you say, I've since learnt that the two doors we banged on were 135, and then you go on to say 134. When you say we banged on, do you mean you or do you mean him?
Yeah, I was referring to us as a team, as one, but it would have been Firefighter Hippel.
Okay. And in the second paragraph on that page, you third paragraph on that page, you say you had a few minutes left of air. I was definitely thinking at that point to go up, but even if we went up and all the lobbies were smoke-logged, we didn't have enough air to do anything with it. The only safe option was to go back down and inform Brian O'Keefe and the ECO at the bridgehead of what we had done and hopefully get crews up to the 16th and above. Given the smoke logging in the lobby, how would you have assisted a resident who did happen to come out of any of the flats on the 16th floor in response to Richard Hippel's knocking?
To the best of our abilities, we would have just have to get them out as quick as possible, carry them out. If it was safe to leave them in their property, we would have done that.
Right.
I would have to judge it on reassess it on the situation if it arose.
Right. In the third paragraph, as we see, on page 13, you describe getting back into the stairwell. And you say, I was, as I've just shown you, I definitely was thinking at that point to go up. What do you mean by that?
Well, because I couldn't rationalise what was happening on the 16th floor, I would assume that something else would have been happening above that. So if I had the resources, I would have gone up to the higher floors.
Right. You were low on air and you had no water.
Yeah, so I had no provisions to do that.
No. So when you said I was thinking to go up, do you mean that other firefighters should go up?
Yes. Well, I would have if I could. If I had enough air, I would have done. I would have gone up.
I follow. Okay. And now. You then, on page 14 in the third paragraph, say, I didn't see Sam, and he was not in the staircase. I remember hoping he wasn't in the staircase because I couldn't find his dad. I'm assuming that Justin O'Byrne had taken him down. Now, is that a thought you had at the time?
Yes.
That is. Now, if it was a thought you had at the time, could you just help me? How did you know that it was his father who had needed assistance?
Again, my memory plays tricks on me. So I remember being told that information that someone needed rescuing on the 16th floor. I assumed it was the person that was with firefighter O'Byrne. So I put two and two together. It's the first time in my career I've ever tried to make a rescue and failed. So it was quite hard to go back down and tell him that we couldn't rescue his dad.
Okay. Did you discuss with Richard Hippel your thought that the rescue had failed?
I don't believe I did. I was trying to get through to the bridgehead because that's quite vital information. So I was on my radio pretty much all the way back down to the ground trying to get back to the bridgehead, trying to get hold of him until, well, I didn't until we actually got down to the bridgehead.
Did you see Sam?
I don't remember.
At all on exiting the 16th floor and between then and getting to the bridgehead?
I really don't remember.
Right. In the third paragraph on page 14, just below the one I've just shown you, you say, I don't remember much smoke being in the stairwell. I do remember people coming down the stairs from the floors above. And you describe them. Do you remember whether they were suffering the effects of smoke?
I can't remember, no.
Right. You say in the second line of that paragraph, I remember walking down the stairs and more people were coming up. Some elderly people, some young people. So we were just reassuring them and walking down with them. When you say coming up, is that right?
Yeah, again, that must have been a typo.
Right.
It was
Where were
going
they
down.
coming from? They
They
were
were
coming down?
going down.
Right.
There.
Okay. And how many people do you remember coming down at that stage, once you'd left the 16th
Handful,
floor?
I don't know, 5 to 10.
Right. Were they calm or were they in a state?
They seemed pretty calm because no one was running. So, for instance, how Mr. DeFan left that lobby, it was someone in shock. The rest of them weren't acting like that. They were just walking down the stairs.
Okay. Now, again, at what kind of pace did you go down? Did you run down or did you walk down leisurely?
Yeah, we was walking down pretty promptly, yes.
Right. Okay. Again, I just put to you something that Sam, in his evidence, in his witness statement, and we'll obviously have to explore his recollection with him in the same way, but his recollection seems to be that you and Richard Hippel ran down. Would that be right?
If I ran, I can't. I remember trying. I wanted to get to the bridgehead as quick as possible
Right.
to relay that information.
Yeah.
So if I ran, but I can't remember.
Okay. Did you encounter any other firefighters coming up as you went down?
Not that I can remember now.
Now, you get back to the bridgehead, and I think on page 15 of your statement you describe that at the top of the page. You say, we went back to the bridgehead at this point. I noticed a little bit sense of urgency. Now things had been going on whilst we were on the 16th floor. I shut my set down, told Brian O'Keefe what we had done and what we saw. I can't remember anything he said to me. I just remember Dickie was telling him some things. Now, I've read that to you. I've got a few questions about that evidence. First of all, we have your end of wear time, just to put this in a time context, of 1:38 and 40 seconds. Would that be about right in terms of the time you'd spent under air?
Yeah, it must be if that's what the telemetry says.
You say, I noticed a little bit sense of urgency. Can you just explain what is a reference to?
It was busy
Right.
at that bridgehead.
What did you see?
There was firefighters. There was Brian. You could tell Brian is now watch manager Keith, and now he kicked up a gear. He was starting to put some command structure in. He needed people doing things. There was a lot at that time. Now my radio, I could hear radio traffic over my handheld radio. So there was things happening very quickly.
Was there a point on your descent down the tower when your handheld radio started to work?
No, I just remember it when I shut down, and then speaking to watch manager Keith, then I could start hearing radio traffic.
Right. Do you remember seeing anybody at the bridgehead writing information up on the wall?
No.
Okay. Do you remember seeing or hearing anything about fire survival guidance being passed to the bridgehead?
No.
What did you hear over the radio, do you think? Can you remember?
No, it was just a lot of chatter. I don't remember exactly what it was.
Are you familiar with metabolic heat stress?
Yes.
Are you familiar with the symptoms of it?
Yes.
Have you experienced it in the past, before Grenfell?
Yes.
Given that experience, are you able to self-diagnose as to whether or not you might have been suffering from metabolic heat stress
no.
when arriving at the bridgehead?
Because I was tired, I was hot, but it didn't take me out, so I was still able to go back, take off my set, and run and carry on working again. So
now, you say in your statement that the second line of page 15, I told Brian O'Keefe what we had done and what we saw. Do you remember where Brian O'Keefe was standing when you spoke to him?
it was at the bridgehead. It was the moment we come down the steps onto the second floor lobby. He was literally in front of the steps.
Can you remember exactly what you said to him?
I would have informed him of my findings. I would have told him what we did.
Did you tell him about the extent of the smoke on the 16th floor in the lobby?
Yes, I would have, yes.
Did he say anything to you back about it?
I can't remember.
Did you say anything to him about what you'd found in the flat 136?
As in the conditions, I would have, yes.
Okay. Do you remember whether he said anything to you about that?
I can't. I think I just said what I needed to say, and he confirmed it.
Did you tell him anything about whether the rescue that you had been intending to make was successful or not?
I told him about the rescue of Mr. Defan, and I did tell him that there was one person unaccounted for.
Right. You remember that, do you?
Pardon?
You remember that, do you?
I definitely remember telling him that we was unsuccessful on the rescue.
Do you remember telling Watch Manager O'Keefe that the person unaccounted for, as you put it, was bedbound?
I hope I did. I'm hoping I did. I definitely would have told him there was a casualty there.
Do you know what Watch Manager O'Keefe did with that information?
No.
Do you know whether he made a new deployment of BA wearers to the 16th floor?
I wouldn't know. I soon left the bridgehead. And
you also say that, this is again top of page 15, I just remember Dickie was telling him some things. Did you hear what Dickie Hippel, that's Richard Hippel, was telling him?
No.
Okay. Can I just ask you one or two questions about casualties? Can I just take you to page 18 of your statement? You say in the third main paragraph on that page, we went back up to the bridgehead. Now, just in terms of timing, this is after you'd left the tower.
Yes.
And had gone back to the bridgehead to assist with casualties. And you say, in the second line, it was really busy, casualties were coming out, and there was a female casualty that was unconscious, not breathing, in that staging area outside of the foyer where the bridgehead was. They needed help carrying her out. First of all, who was at the staging area with the casualty?
BA crews.
Do you remember who they were? Could you identify their members?
No.
Do you remember who the they is, where you say they needed help carrying her out?
Whatever crews were on that mezzanine foyer area.
Do you know? Are you able to help us with what kind of time this was?
No, sorry.
Okay. Doing the best you can, having end of wear at about 1:38. Was it minutes or hours after that?
With this specific casualty, I did a lot of running back and forth from the bridgehead before this incident happened. So when it comes to time, I have no idea.
Right. In the fourth line down, you say, I and the same officer who gave me the child picked her up. Are you able to identify who that same officer is?
No, sorry.
Okay. You say on page 21 of your statement, at the top of the page, that you had a shouting discussion with Watch Manager Williams from G35 Fulham. He was on the staircase in the foyer. Do you know what he was doing when you had that discussion?
He was he wanted me to get a member of the London Ambulance Service into the building. I believe there was 2 casualties there, one maybe a child, and then he wanted them to come and help with CPR or some kind of medical service.
Did you see him writing information on the wall?
At that specific moment, no.
Right. Do you remember when the bridgehead moved down to the ground floor?
No, it wasn't then. At that stage, they were still on the second floor.
Still on the second floor.
Yes.
Do you remember learning that the bridgehead had moved to the third floor?
Yes, I believe that was a lot later into. I assuming that was later after this incident.
Do you remember when it was?
Oh, what time it moved to the
Yes.
ground floor? No, I don't.
Okay. Right. After you had your BA wear and left the tower and then come back in, do you remember seeing or hearing or learning anything about how fire survival guidance information was being passed to the bridgehead?
No, I remember during the night seeing a watch manager setting up on a bin or a car bonnet as I was running past them through the night. But no, I wasn't involved with FFG calls at all that evening.
Okay. Just going back to the 16th floor, we had a discussion a minute ago or two about banging on all the doors, Richard Hippel banging on the doors. Do you remember whether he banged on all the doors or just the two that you've identified?
I clearly remember those two that I mentioned earlier. I can't remember if he did the other doors.
You can't remember?
No.
Right. Okay. Right. Mr. Stern, thank you very much for your assistance. I have no further questions for you. I'm very grateful to you for coming to the inquiry and assisting us with our investigations. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Yes, and I'd add my thanks, Mr. Stern. It's very helpful for us to hear your evidence about what was going on inside the tower and the conditions at different places when you were there. So thank you very much indeed. Now, before you leave, Mr. Millet, can I release this witness
Yes,
now?
absolutely. Thank you very much.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for coming. You're free to go.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, we do have another witness this afternoon.
We do, but
That
this
is-
might be a convenient time for a short break.
It would. Thank you.
Yes. So if I do you know roughly how long you might want to be with the next witness?
This is going to be Mr. Kinnear's witness, and
Oh, right.
he has given me an assurance that it will not be more than an hour. I'm not sure what sort of assurance it is, but
Well, we shall find out. Well, I'm going to say 3:20 then. because
Thank you
we'll
very
see
much.
How we get on. Right. 3:20, please. Now, Mr. Kinnear, we're going to see Mr. Bettinson, is that
We
right?
are. May I call him?
Thank you.
Would you like to repeat after me, please? I do solemnly, sincerely and truly declare and affirm
I do solemnly, sincerely, truly declare and affirm
that the evidence I shall give
that the evidence I shall give
shall be the truth,
shall be the truth,
the whole truth,
the whole truth,
and nothing but the
and nothing but the truth.
Good. Thank you very much, Mr. Bettinson. Sit down and make yourself comfortable.
First of all, would you confirm your name for the record, please?
My name's Harry Bettinson.
Thank you. And first of all, many thanks for coming today to give evidence. It's very much appreciated. First of all, can you confirm you provided a statement, which hopefully you can find in the tab, the first tab in the blue folder in front of you?
Yeah.
And that statement's dated the 27th of November of last year.
That's correct, yeah.
And the contents are true.
To the best of my knowledge, yeah.
Yeah. And behind the statement, hopefully there is a contemporaneous note.
Yeah.
And the contents of that document are true as well, is that right?
Yeah, to the best of my knowledge, that's right.
And have you read both those documents recently?
I have, yes.
And are you content that those documents stand as your evidence to the inquiry?
Yes.
Mr. Bettinson, this afternoon I don't propose to take you through each and every line of your witness statement and note. What I want to do is just pick out particular topics to discuss with you, if that's all right.
Yeah, that's fine.
Now, if any stage any of my questions are unclear, that's my fault. Ask me to rephrase them, and I will do so to make them clearer. Now, if we may start with the basics. First of all, you've now been a firefighter for 2.5 years, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
And at the time of the fire, you were based at Paddington, is that right?
Yeah.
And that you were allocated to Red Watch.
That's right, yeah.
And as at the 14th of June of last year, you'd been in service for about 15 months or so.
That's correct, yeah.
And on the night itself, you were in Alpha 212.
Yeah, on the back of the pump.
And that you were there together with crew manager Gallagher and firefighters Keane, Wolfenden and Campbell. Is that
That's
right? It's now a matter of record, but does it sound right that you were mobilised at 1:15, on the road at 1:17 and at the scene at 1:26?
Yeah, sounds pretty much accurate.
Now, the first topic I'd like to discuss with you is your training and practical experience, if that's all right. First of all, can we deal with your training whilst at training school?
Yeah.
First of all, when were you at training school?
I started training school in February 2016.
And is it right that the training period lasts a total of 11
That's
weeks?
correct, yeah.
During that time, what training did you receive regarding high-rise firefighting?
In regards to high-rise firefighting, you do a document on it, and you learn where to set the bridgehead up, what equipment you need at the high-rise fire, what you do, what pump you was riding. But with regard to actual firefighting in the high-rise, you wouldn't receive any.
And did you receive any instruction or training as to what to do should compartmentation in high-rise buildings fail?
No.
And did you receive any training regarding the particular risks posed by cladding and fire on high-rise buildings?
No.
What training did you receive regarding the Coanda effect, for example?
You do a document on it and what the Coanda effect is, where the fire can jump floors. You'll do a presentation on it, but you won't actually see it live. It will be like a presentation on a computer.
And would that be the same in relation to instruction regarding vertical and lateral fire spread?
Yeah.
Now, could I ask you now about the training you've received since you've been at Paddington?
Yeah.
What training have you received there in relation to high-rise firefighting?
So we'll drill quite a lot in the yard. At least every tour we'll drill, and then actually before the night of Grenfell, the day before we was on duty, and we did do a high-rise drill. So it's just like a combination drill where you'd be setting up ladders, pitching the TL, setting a bridgehead up, and then getting everything to work so it runs smoothly. Okay. So if we do have a high-rise, we know what role everyone has and what we're doing.
So it's a combination of lectures and practical exercises, is that right? And who provides that training?
That'll be done by the watch manager.
And did you receive any training during your time at Paddington about what to do should compartmentation in flats and high-rise buildings fail?
Not as such, no. It's hard to do any real fire training because we don't have the facilities for it.
And did you have any particular training in relation to the risks posed by cladding on high-rise buildings?
No.
And have you received any training whilst you've been at Paddington regarding phenomena such as the Coanda effect?
No.
During your time, either at training school or at Paddington, have you been given instruction as to how to self-diagnose metabolic heat stress?
Yeah.
And what are you trained to look out for?
Just the signs of what it is, so signs and symptoms of headaches, getting angry, looking out for them, it's just how to deal with it. So radial cooling, putting your hands in buckets of water. So it's quite a big thing, especially when you're doing real fire training, because you're in quite a few hot wares in a day. So you're quite exposed to it.
Thank you. Could I ask you to turn to page 18 of your witness statement? And in the second substantive paragraph, fourth line down, you say that on the day before you carried out a mock-up high-rise exercise just the day before the Grenfell Tower fire.
Yeah.
What did that training involve?
So it would just be a combination of drill that the governor put together. So it would be turning up with the 2 trucks and everyone knowing their roles. So if we do have a high-rise, then we know straight away when we get there what we're doing. So we simulated that so the crew would set up a bridgehead, the other crew would then go to the bridgehead and then take the hose up to the fire floor, and also we were putting up a covering jet, which this time we used the ground monitor as a covering jet.
And did the training involve how to deal with situations, again, when compartmentation fails?
No.
Did the exercise involve simulating a partial or total evacuation of the residents of a high-rise building? Could I ask you to turn to page 4 now of your statement? Apologies for jumping around. Now, page 4, the top line, you refer to the fact that you'd attended the fire at Trellick Tower. Mr. Keane mentioned yesterday that the Paddington Red Watch had gathered a number of learning points following that fire.
Yeah.
For you personally, what did you learn from your experiences fighting the fire at Trellick Tower?
That was my first ever high-rise fire at Trellick Towers. So from learning from that, it was actually putting practice into what you've done. So I learned how the bridgehead gets set up actually on the job, and also the compartmentalisation of a building worked at Trellick Towers. There was a problem with the wet riser there. It did take quite a bit of time for us to get water on it. Because of the compartment, it stayed in that flat.
Thank you. Now, the next topic I'd like to discuss with you is your entry into the tower.
Yeah.
And for these purposes, might I ask Paul to turn up CCTV tab 1, which is Inc. quintuple 0221. Now, Mr. Bettinson, this is a still from CCTV camera 4 at the main entrance of the tower, and it's timed at 01:30:56. Now, just for people who are looking at this online, the correct timing, unfortunately, is obscured in the bottom left-hand corner, and it's corrected according to an agreed methodology. Now, first of all, do you recognise yourself in that still?
Yeah.
And if you could point using the bigger screen above you, which one you are.
I'm the first person nearest with the diamonds on my helmet.
Thank you. And who else is with you? Who is at the forefront of the photograph?
So that's crew manager Gallagher, firefighter Campbell behind me. I'm not sure who the firefighter. I think it might be firefighter Tillotson, maybe because of his helmet.
And just for
Sorry, crew manager Tillotson.
Apologies, I spoke over you. And just looking at his helmet, at your helmet rather, there is a marking of a diamond shape.
Yeah,
Does that indicate you're a probationer?
Yeah, it means you're a recruit, yeah.
Now, could I ask you to turn to page 5 of your witness statement and the top paragraph? And you say, we entered the ground floor through the main entrance, and our first thing was to check to see if anyone had taken control of the lift, the same lift that members of the public would use. This is one of the first actions to do at a fire in a building with a lift. The fire brigade uses a drop key or similar to take control of the lift. Now, By this, do you mean that you're putting the lift into fire mode so that it can only be used by crews and not residents?
That's correct, yeah.
And if this is one of the first things you do on arrival, does that mean that you would have been expecting someone to have taken control of the lift already as people had preceded you?
If the lift was working, yes.
Now, I think you say that crew manager Gallagher called the lift. Did he call it using the button, or did he put a drop key into the panel?
I think, from my memory, he called it using the button.
Mr. Bettinson, if I can now consider with you your progress up the tower and start off at the beginning, at the bridgehead. If you keep page 5 of your witness statement open, looking at the first substantive paragraph in the first sentence, you said, "We went up to the bridgehead." Presumably you used the stairs to get there.
Yeah.
And can you describe what the conditions were like in the stairs at that time? Visibility, presence of smoke, temperature?
It was clearly visible, and it just felt like a normal bridgehead at a high-rise fire. It was a bit more chaotic, but it was just like a normal high-rise fire. I still thought it was a normal high-rise fire.
And if we can now consider the precise location of the bridgehead, on page 5 at the second substantive paragraph in the third line, you say that the bridgehead was set up on the floor that overlooked the lobby.
Yeah.
To be clear, do you mean the second floor?
Yeah, and it was literally the first staircase you'd use to go up into the tower. It was just to the left of that.
And just to help us further, can you describe exactly where the bridgehead was on the second floor? Was it within the lobby or
So
actually
it was
on the balcony?
It was
part?
within the lobby, literally to the left of the staircase.
And it may be helpful if this stage, if Paul, you could bring up a document at the bundle tab 5. Now, would it help if you, using the larger screen behind you, Mr. Bettinson, can you just locate precisely where the bridgehead was at the time you entered the tower?
Yeah, so where it says steps up,
Yes,
so literally to the left of that.
thank you.
Not through to the communal hall, just to the left of that, steps up. Like the first steps up here.
And where were the entry control boards?
There, that's the, yeah.
Now, turning as the next topic to the setup of the bridgehead itself, who was in charge?
I believe it was Watch Manager O'Keefe.
And who was in charge of briefing the crews before they went up the tower?
If Watch Manager O'Keefe was in charge of the bridgehead, it would have been him.
And I think in your statement you say there were 10 of you there. Does that mean that 10 of you were wearing BA?
Yeah, all lined up, ready to go in yet.
Now, if looking at page 5 again, and looking at the substantive paragraph on that page, the 7th line, you say that you were briefed to carry out search and rescue, and quotes, to go up and get people out of the building from each floor, and to do this for as long as we could. Now, looking at that, what information were you given, if any, in respect of particular people in particular flats that needed rescuing?
None at all. I was just, from what I remember, we were just told that it's getting smoky up there. Just go and see what's happening, really, and if you can get someone out, get someone out. Wasn't really much. No one really knew what was happening. The fire was jumping, the smoke was jumping. No one really had an understanding.
And I hope I put this fairly, but in summary, you were told just to get up there and bring people down.
Yeah,
Is that a
you
fair
can.
summary?
Yeah.
And beyond what you saw when you first arrived at the tower, were you given any further briefing as to the extent of the external fire spread at that stage?
No, when we first turned up, all I could see was maybe 2 or 3 floors of light, and just thought, that's it.
Were you given any briefing as to the extent of any fire within the tower before you went up?
No.
And finally, were you given any information as to smoke conditions within the tower?
Just that it was getting smokier in there. That the smoke was travelling, but not actually where it was, or what was happening. It was just getting smokier in the building.
Now, the next topic I'd like to consider with you is your progress from the bridgehead up to the 6th floor. Now, we have your BA tally out time as 01:41:55. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, I've got no concept of time that night, so yeah.
Can you describe what conditions were like in the stairwell? as you went up between the 3rd, 4th and 5th floors?
From what I remember, I think I said I think we started searching from the 3rd, but I can't remember where we actually started searching. But I know it was about the 6th floor because you could make out the number in the lobby. That's when it started getting smokier and darker. And then when we got up to the 7th, it was really smoky, and you could sort of make out objects. And then
I'll come on to sort of above the 6th floor in due course, but
the 6th was where it started getting smokier and harder to see.
And did the temperature increase by the time you got to the 6th floor as well?
Yeah, but I'm not sure if that's obviously because we're working harder and you're working, so but the temperature was getting hotter.
Were you walking or running up the stairwell?
Like jog, I'd say, like it was making progress.
And as you went up the towers, you were progressing through each floor. Were you keeping the bridgehead updated as to what you were finding?
I can't remember who had comms. I'm not sure if I had it, who had it in our crew, but I'm not sure if they were or not. I can't answer that.
Now, if we can just deal now with the conditions you found on the 6th floor itself. If I could ask you, maybe easier to turn to page 6 and the second substantive paragraph on that page and the first sentence, where you say, I think the next paragraph, which starts on the 6th floor. On the 6th floor, the smoke was worsening. What colour was the smoke that you encountered when you first entered the 6th floor?
Dark.
Was it black dark, grey dark?
Yeah, it was just a dark smoke, but it was black, but you could make out shapes.
And how thick was it?
It was thick enough that you couldn't see, but you could roughly see the outline of like the lift and outline of the walls.
In the lobby itself, was the smoke evenly distributed, or did it congregate, for example, in the ceiling area? You don't. Are you able, and this may be an unfair question given the passing of time, are you able to give any gauge as to any difference in temperature between the 5th and 6th floors in the stairwells
really,
and on the floors themselves? Once you were at the 6th floor, you heard one of the others say that he had someone in the flat to the right. Did you go into that flat?
I didn't, no.
Now, looking at the bottom of page 6 of your statement, the second line up, it says, we told them they needed to get out, so the occupants of that flat.
Yeah.
Which one of you said that to the occupants of the flat?
I don't know, but it wasn't me.
Can you remember the words or the gist of the words that were used to advise the occupants?
I think it was more of a, it wasn't a shout or told them to get out, it was more, we need to just go now. I was on the other side of the lobby.
Thank you. Now, some of your colleagues took the occupants of the flat down.
Yeah.
And that you and Mr. Tillotson continued to go up the tower, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Now, in relation to the conditions as you went up to the 10th floor, if we turn to page 7 of your statement and the first substantive paragraph on that page at line 4, you describe the conditions thus. I was aware of it being warm and the heat increasing as we'd gone up the floors, but nothing too bad. But the heat was definitely noticeable and uncomfortable from the 9th floor. It also became smokier with each floor we went up. You described the heat increasing on the way up, and you say it was uncomfortable,
yeah,
as I've quoted. Was this both in the stairwell and in the lobbies?
Yeah.
You say the smoke was black. Can you describe for us the density of that smoke as you went up between the 7th and 10th floors?
In the stairwell, it wasn't as bad, like you could still sort of make it out, but when you open the 9th floor, you couldn't really see anything. You could probably see about maybe a foot in front of you.
On each of the floors as you went up, starting on the 7th floor?
It got progressively worse.
Were you able to see, for example, on the 7th floor, where the smoke was coming from?
No.
On the 8th floor?
No.
On the 9th?
No idea.
So on none of the floors could you see where the smoke was coming from? Now, you got to the 10th floor.
Yeah.
And if I could ask you again to look at page 7 of your statement and the second substantive paragraph, lines 2 and 3. You describe smoke flooding out as crew manager Tillotson opened the door to the 10th floor lobby. You say it was really dark and hot. Are you describing the smoke in particular or the conditions generally?
The conditions in the lobby, you couldn't see in there. It just when he opened the door, it shot out over his head, and then we just both looked at each other and we're not going in there at the moment. We had nothing with us.
Mindful of your earlier answer, were you able to update the bridgehead as to the
I
conditions you
don't know, I
encountered?
didn't have comms.
Now, seeing the conditions that confronted you as you sought to get into the 10th floor lobby, what did you decide to do? What action did you take
So
next?
I remembered where the dry riser was on the 9th floor. So we decided to go back down to the 9th and get some hose, plug in, and start firefighting on the 10th.
And you went down to the 9th floor, and what did you find there?
I located the dry riser, and also, so there's a little bit of like time that's left out of the statement, but where I located the dry riser, Crew Manager Gallagher was now back up, and I turned to him to grab some hose. He handed me some hose, and then when I turned around again, the dry riser was gone. It had gone within a matter of seconds.
So completely obscured by the smoke is what you're saying?
So you could just about make it out, and then within 5 seconds of grabbing some hose and turning back round, it was gone.
Could I ask you to turn up to the top of page 8 of your statement? And just to give a little bit of context here, you say, you realise that firefighter Wolfenden and crew manager Gallagher had found a family in flat 65, a mother and daughter. I realised that after taking the family from the 6th floor down, they must have returned back up following mine and crew manager Tillotson's footsteps, checking the flats on each floor after us. We now had 2 jobs. We had a family to get out and a fire to fight on the 10th floor. Now, it may be useful at this stage, Paul, if you wouldn't mind, turning up an exhibit to Mr. Bettinson's statement, which is at MET 000 15788. Now, hopefully this is, you'll remember this as one of the exhibits to your statement. Can you show us, first of all, where you were? Is it marked by the words dry riser?
Yeah, that's it.
And what was the distance between the dry riser and flat 65?
Length of flat 4.
Now, when you said you saw thick black smoke filling the lobby within about 10 to 15 seconds and it was getting hotter, apologies for asking the same question again, but on this occasion, could you see where the smoke was coming from?
No.
Could you see anything in particular that had triggered the conditions you encountered?
Not a thing. It was just 1 minute it was clear, and then 10 seconds later you couldn't see your hand in front of your face.
Looking at the second substantive paragraph on page 8, you say their flat, i.e. flat 65, wasn't affected by the smoke or fire at that point. By that, do you mean there was no smoke at all
There's
within
nothing
the
in
flat?
that flat.
Given the conditions you'd experienced in the stairwell and the lobbies, were you trying to account for the disparity in conditions that you encountered?
Not really. We were just more worried about what we're going to do with the family and how we're going to get them out.
And at one point, it was decided that Tillotson, Gallagher and Ben, who I think was from the Brixton station, would go down to get spare BA sets. Were they doing that in order to bring those sets up so they could bring the mother and child down?
That's correct, yeah.
Is it usual practice when confronted with situations like this, analogous to this,
No.
to use BA kits to bring people down?
No, but it's an unusual fire, so...
If I could ask you to turn to page 9 of your statement and the second paragraph and the last 4 lines of that paragraph, you say this: "We knew we were running out of time. The smoke was getting worse every second. I went out into the corridor a couple of times to monitor the situation and see if the others were coming yet. The whole of the corridor was compromised, totally full of thick black hot smoke, and I looked through the letterbox of the next door flat and saw that the whole thing looked to be on fire." First of all, the first element of that quotation, "We knew we were running out of time, the smoke was getting worse every second." Just to be clear, are you describing the smoke conditions within flat 65?
No, within the lobby. Yeah.
What were the smoke conditions like in the flat itself?
Still all right. When we got in there, I shut all the windows and I put a duvet in front of the door.
I think you later describe or state that you were within flat 65 for at least 15 to 20 minutes.
About that, yeah.
Did the conditions within the flat deteriorate whilst you were in there?
Not whilst we was in there, no.
Did heat increase?
No.
Looking at the third paragraph on page 9, you say that you made contact with Watch Manager Collins by radio to request a ladder. The Watch Manager said they couldn't get it anywhere near to you due to the size of the debris coming down. Now, would the use of the aerial ladder be a standard response to the circumstances in which you found yourself in flat 65?
I mean, for what we thought, from what I still thought when I went in, it was a fire over about 3 floors, and this is my first ever, or second ever high-rise fire. So I thought that it was just a bit of smoke that was travelling up. So I presume the TL could probably make a rescue at a push at 10 floors. So being on the 9th, I thought, and Wolfie, who was with me, he's a TL operator. But then we didn't realise what the conditions were outside.
And was it his idea that you should call Collins for the...
I just thought I'd come up with it. Yeah.
And did you experience any difficulties getting in touch with the Watch Manager?
It was quite heavy radio traffic, but I can't... From what I remember, there was someone coming back on the radio. I don't know if it was Watch Manager Collins, but it was a bit like you haven't got a chance of getting a TL near it.
Can you remember, and again it's an unfair question given the amount of time that's passed, can you remember the distance in time between you making the call and the request and the response coming back?
No.
No. Thank you. Now the next issue I'd like to discuss with you is leaving flat 65 and going down to the bridgehead. Now if I could ask you to turn to page 10 and the second paragraph on that page, and the first 2 sentences in particular, and which state, as soon as you left the flat, you couldn't see a thing. As firefighters, we wear a torch on our chest. In the stairwell, the smoke was so thick and dense that this torch was only giving me maybe 6 inches of visibility as a maximum. There was no other lighting. It was pure black, and we knew we had 9 floors to get down, so had to go fast. Now, arising out of that, were those the conditions you encountered on the stairwell on each of the floors as you descended down the tower?
Yeah, so it never recovered. Like, it was black thick smoke until about maybe the third or fourth floor. That was it.
Apologies.
No, that was what it was. It had gone. The whole thing had gone. It was thick black smoke.
Are you able to describe the temperature as you descended from the 9th floor down to the bridgehead?
It was just hot, and felt like it was getting hotter as you went down.
Do you think that was due to the heat of the surrounding circumstances, or just because you were expending energy trying to get down?
A bit of both, I think, yeah.
Do you think at that stage you were experiencing the symptoms of metabolic heat stress?
I don't think so.
Do you remember what, if any, firefighting equipment was in the stairwell as you went down?
A lot of hose. A lot of hose. On the way up, there wasn't as much, but when we were coming out, there was a lot of hose.
Can you remember meeting any residents as you went down?
No residents. To be honest, going down, it was just to hold on to the little girl and we get out of here. There wasn't really much thinking going on.
Could I ask you to turn over the page of your statement to page 11 and the first substantive paragraph on that page and lines 1 and 2? And you say, 1 more floor down and we reached the bridgehead which had moved close to the first staircase in the lobby area. Paul, if you would mind showing document from the bundle documents, tab 5, again. Mr. Bettinson, if that's expanded, are you able to show us on that drawing where the bridgehead was when you came down?
The bridgeheads and the entry control boards were now in the communal hall.
In the communal hall?
So it just moved to the left.
We have the end of your BA wear time as 02:15:42. Does that sound about right to you?
Yeah, it must be.
Now, the penultimate topic I'd like to discuss with you is assisting casualties on the evening. On page 11, the paragraph at the bottom of the page, you said that you then assisted with running casualties being carried out on trolleys. You say the casualties were being taken over to the leisure centre. Was the leisure centre the central place at which the LAS was based?
Not casualties. When we first come out of the tower, there was a deceased casualty on a trolley, and then when whoever was taking it away, they were struggling to bump it up the thing, so I helped them up with that. And that was when we first came out of the tower. But after that, when I went back into the tower, it was helping casualties to the left. So it would be the west side of the building, out towards the BA holding area.
Do you recall whether the bridgehead moved to the 3rd floor?
No.
Turning back to casualties, could I ask you to turn to page 13 and the top 2 sentences? After a short while of being in the BA holding area, I don't know where everyone went, but I was still with crew manager Gallagher, and we went together back to the tower entrance to help with casualty handling. Where did you take the casualties to on that occasion at that time?
So there was sort of like a chain. So when the casualties came down from the inside the atrium bit, there's the glass floor, and underneath that, out to the west side, there's some side doors, and out to where the BA holding area was, and there was a chain of getting casualties from there.
I understand. Now, the final topic I'd like to discuss with you today is your triage role at the pub on Bramley Road. And if I could ask you to turn to page 15, and the second sentence from the top of that page, you say, I was helping firefighter Keane when someone from command came over and stated that they needed someone to go to the triage centre that had been set up on Bramley Road in a pub. He wanted details of the people coming into the triage centre, collected and radioed over to the command unit who were working on the fire safety guidance phone calls, so these details could be cross-checked to know who was out of the tower and who was still missing. I went along with a firefighter woman from Willesden. Now, in relation to the role that you performed that night at the triage centre, do you remember who it was from command who asked you to do this function?
No, they literally walked around the fireground and saw I was a recruit, so they grabbed me and took me over there, and it was literally, if people were coming in to triage, it was just noting their name down and then just what flat they came from.
So, as far as you're aware, the senior officer or the more senior officer who directed you to carry out this task wasn't from the command unit?
I think they were from the command unit, yeah.
Would it have been a gentleman called Cook?
I don't know.
Do you remember what time in the evening you were asked to carry out this function?
In the morning it would have been, because it was getting light.
Okay. I think if I ask you to turn over back page to page 14, I think you said it started at the very last line at the bottom of that page. I was aware that it started getting light and that your alarm had gone off at 7 a.m.
Yeah.
Was this before or after you were asked to assist with the triage function?
I think that was before.
If we could just step back. Sorry, before I go on to an additional topic. You say you had to get the details of people coming into the triage centre and radio these over to the command unit so they'd be cross-checked against FSG phone calls. Do you know who you were communicating with at the command unit?
No.
Do you know which people were in the command unit?
There was a watch manager also with me at Bramley Road, and we weren't radioing over and making any communication. It was just if someone came in, you took their details and passed them on to him.
Right. Did you have any calls to communicate directly with the command unit itself?
No.
Did you make any record of the information that you were collecting and then passing on?
I don't think anyone came through when I was there. To me personally, there was a couple of us there.
Going back to the rescue for flat 65, how did you use the BA sets on the mother and little girl? How did you fit them?
So crew manager Tillotson was low on air, so we unplugged the face mask from one set and crew manager Tillotson plugged into that set, so he had extra air. I had plenty of air, so the little girl's mask went in my set and then I carried her, and the other set was put on the mother and she was taken down in BA.
And how complicated was it to fit the BA apparatus to the little girl?
It's very complicated because some of these face masks, some people in the fire brigade need personal issue face masks because of the size and shape of the face, so for a child to wear an adult's mask, it's difficult, so we just put it on, did it as tight as we could and held it to her face.
Again, I should ask this, but are you able to gauge how long it took you to fit the little girl's, the mask
Minutes.
of the little girl?
We trained for this stuff, we trained to do second set procedure and yeah.
Now, you entered the tower at 1:30 roundabouts and reported the bridgehead at 1:42. Now, between the entrance and the bridgehead, did you see a resident on crutches at all?
No.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Bettinson, I have no further questions for you. I'm asked to ask you by Mr. Millett, did you see anyone writing FSG messages?
I didn't.
Anywhere?
No.
Okay. In those circumstances, Mr. Bettinson, thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
coming to the inquiry to give evidence today. Sir, with your permission,
There's a bit
might
of
I ask you...
semaphoring going on it. Maybe there are some more questions,
No
or
worries.
at least one or two.
Well, there may be or maybe not. But sir,
it-
might I ask you to rise for, say, 5 minutes?
Yeah, I
and
think
then-
what we'll do, Mr. Bettinson, we'll have a 5-minute break while they sort out the question of further questions, and then we'll come back. All right. So 4 o'clock. We'll
Lovely.
be back here, and please don't talk to anyone else about your evidence while you're out of the room. All right?
Yeah, thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. You go with the usher then. Thank you. Right, we'll resume at 4 o'clock, please. Thank you. Now, Mr. Kinnear, do you have some more questions?
Two very brief questions, sir.
Right.
Ms. Besson, thank you very much for your patience. Just two questions for you in relation to familiarisation visits. Did you ever pay a familiarisation visit to Grenfell Tower before the fire?
No, it's not on our ground, so it wouldn't be on our.
And so it flows from that you wouldn't have expected to have made such a visit?
No.
Ms. Besson, those are all the questions we have for you today, and thank you very much for coming along.
Thank you very much.
Now, Mr. Besson, did you tell me that it's only your second high-rise fire?
That was at the time, yeah.
Well, if I may say so, I think you played a very important part in the fire brigade's response and did extraordinarily well, if I may say so.
Thank you.
And I have to thank you very much for coming to give your evidence. I hope it hasn't been too daunting an experience, but it certainly helped us a lot. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Right, you'd like to go with the usher? She'll see you out. Good.
So thank you. That concludes the business for today. There will be 3 witnesses on Monday, a 10 a.m. start.
Yes.
And so that concludes our business for today, sir.
Good. Thank you very much. Well, that's it for today. We'll break now. Resume at 10 o'clock on Monday next week, when we shall hear from some more firefighters, I think. Anyway. Good. Thank you all very much. 10 o'clock on Monday, then. Thank you.